Hey guys, this is Eggy and this is the Math Egghead program. In this video, we are going to continue with some practice problems dealing with adding integers. I did want to give you guys a quick heads up. If you are not familiar with integers, feel free to go through any one of my videos that deals with the introduction of integers. And in those videos, I do go through a very lengthy explanation on integers, absolute values, the opposite numbers, and how to actually deal with integers when you're adding and subtracting using the number line. For those who feel fairly comfortable with integers, continue to watch. I am just doing practice problems in this particular video. But again, if you want a little more practice or just a little reminder on everything as far as with integers, always feel free to look at any of these videos here, and I'm sure you'll find the information that you are needing. And also, just a quick reminder, I do have a Patreon page where I also include lengthy videos on any topic that has to do with college algebra, calculus, and pre-calculus, of course. And I do have a few videos also that deal with chemistry as far as like balancing chemical equations, the empirical formulas, and so forth. So always feel free to check either my page on YouTube or definitely my Patreon page. And if you do become a Patreon, actually you do have access to more than 50 videos where I do explain in a lengthy way any topic that you desire, and on top of that you do have direct access to me. So if you do have any specific math or science question that you would like for me to make a video on and accommodate you, I'll be more than happy to do so as well. So let's get started. All right, guys, so let's start with this first problem here. Again, this is only going to be practice problems. Now, let's start with 6 plus -9. So as we know, when you're adding two numbers that have two different signs, you subtract the difference between these two numbers and you keep the number of the higher sign. So what I mean by that is technically we would just say 6 minus 9 we know is 3, and we would keep the sign of the highest number, which is 9. So it would be -3. Now, for those who like to use the number line real quick, let's go ahead and see how this would look on the number line here. So this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, guys, so it's 6, +6, which is here. And we're moving 9 spaces, but since it's a negative number, we know that we're heading towards the left. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. -3. All right, guys, let's try another problem here. All right, so let's try -3 plus -8. Now, do you guys remember the rule for this? When you're adding two integers that actually have the same sign, what you would do is you would add as normal and keep the sign, and they're both the same in this particular problem. They're both negative. So what I mean by that, it would be 3 plus 8. So we know that's 11, and then we have a negative and a negative, so that would be -11. For those who want to see it on the number line real quick, let's start here. And let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so remember the first number always tells us where we're starting. Oh, excuse me, I forgot the negative sign here. Okay, so we're starting at -3. We're adding 8 spaces, but we know we're adding a negative number, so we are going to the left. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Negative 11. So remember, when you're adding two integers or two numbers that have the same sign, you add as normal and keep keep the sign of both numbers because it's the same. So in this case, it was negative 11. All right, guys, let's try something else. Let's try here 13 plus 5. Now, let's say we had negative 5. Remember what the rule was here. When we're adding two numbers that have a different sign, we subtract. We find the difference between the two numbers. The difference is another way of saying subtract the numbers and keep the number of the higher sign. Keep the sign of the higher number. And the higher number between 5 and 13 would be 13, of course, right? So in this case, it really means 13 minus 5 here. So once we go ahead and 13 minus 5 is 8. We keep the sign of the higher number, which is 13. So this is positive. Now remember, when it's positive, you don't have to add that positive sign. If we don't see a sign, that means we automatically know it's positive. But for those who want to see it on the number line really quick, let's go ahead and try this out. Now this is a bigger number, so let's say for time purposes only, let's say this is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? And we're adding a negative number. So we know, let me erase this. We know that we're adding a negative number, so we have to go to the left. So this is 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. So let's start from here. We're starting at positive 13. We're adding, but we're adding a negative number. So you know when you're adding a negative number, you do have to move to the left side of the number line because the number is getting smaller. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Positive 8. All right, guys. So let's try something else. Let's do negative 4 plus negative 5. Now, when we're adding two numbers, we know we keep the sign the same, and we know that's negative. And then we add as normal. So 4 plus 5 is 9. Let's do another one. What if we did negative 15 plus 1? It would be negative 16. What if I gave you a bigger number? What if I said negative 100 plus negative 50? Remember, when we're adding two numbers that have the same sign, we add as normal and keep the sign. So it would be 150. What if we had negative 126 plus negative 247 plus negative 18 plus 339? How would that look? What would you guys start with? Now, I don't want you guys to get intimidated by this because basically you're just breaking down the actual problem. You're just going to go straight through. So I'm going to let you pause on the video and work this out. All right, guys. So we're just going to go ahead and start with the first part. 126 plus negative 247. Now, what's the two things here that you need to notice? Well, the first thing here is you're adding, and you're adding two integers that have the same sign. So remember the rule with that. When you're adding two integers with the same sign, you add as normal and keep the sign. So 126 plus 247 equals negative 373. Now, the next part of the problem is negative 373 plus negative 18. Well, again, what are we looking at? We know that we're adding, and we're adding two integers with the same sign. So we know that we're keeping the sign the same. So it'll be 373 plus 18, which is 391, and it's negative. And then negative 391 plus a positive 339. Well, here we're adding two numbers, but they have different signs. This is a negative, this is a positive. So we would go ahead and find the difference between the two. So it's 391 minus 339. We know that it's 52, and we take the number of the higher the sign of the higher number. So the highest number here is 391, so we keep the negative sign. So it's negative 52. Now, some of you guys might say, okay, it's negative 391 plus 339. I have to find the difference. So let me go 339 minus 391. Now, if you guys were to do that, when you minus those two numbers in that order, you do get negative 52. But I want you guys to be careful, because there will be times that if you rearrange the numbers and don't keep in mind the sign that you're dealing with, you could mess up and actually get a different or incorrect number. I am going to show you what I'm talking about in the next problem. All right, guys, so let's try another number. Let's say we had 9, negative 9, plus a 5. Find the difference between these two. We know that we're adding, of course, but there's two integers here with two different signs. So we know that when we're adding two integers with two different signs, we find the difference. So technically it's 9 minus 5, which is 4. But what I was saying before is that the reason why you need to be very careful when you do problems like this. Now, negative 9 plus positive 4 is the same thing as negative 9 minus 5, excuse me, negative 9 minus 5. They both equal negative 4. No, they don't. Actually, cut this out. Let's do negative 11 plus 3. We're adding two numbers with different signs, so we know we find the difference. Now, it's 11 minus 3, which is 7. Keep the sign of the higher number, which is negative 11, so it's negative 7. Now, some people might say, well, what if I changed it to 3 plus negative 11? Is that the same? Yes, it is. But when you're subtracting certain integers, it will cause the problem to be different. Now, you're going to see more of that in the next video that I have coming up with subtracting integers and also practice problems with adding and subtracting integers. But what I mean by that is, if, let's say, for instance, you had 9 plus negative 5. Some might think, okay, well, this sign, I'm able to kick it here and put 9 plus 5, and it's... Let's let you pause in the video and think about that. Well, when you're adding two numbers and it has a difference in sign, yes, it's the same. They're both going to equal 4. But is it going to have the same sign? Let's try it. Negative plus negative 5, the difference is 4. But what's the higher number here? It's 9, and the sign is positive. Now remember, we usually don't write the positive sign, but just for visual purposes, I am showing you that. What about negative 9 plus 5? Well, we know the difference between 9 and 5 is 4, but the sign of the higher number is negative. So, in this case, those two problems are not the same. So, there is a big difference when you're adding. You have to keep in mind the signs. It's very important when you're adding two integers, okay? Addition of integers is the easiest thing you'll ever encounter once you get a good grip on it, okay? So when you're adding two signs, for instance, let me erase all of this for you guys. All right, guys. Let me show you what I mean. So when you're adding two integers with the same sign, you keep the sign and you add as normal. Keep the sign, add as normal. Remember, with the positive signs, you don't have to write that down, okay? We already know if there isn't a sign, we're going to assume that it's positive. But when you're adding an integer that has a different sign, what you do is you find the difference, meaning you subtract the 2. 5 plus 4, excuse me, negative 5 plus 4 really is 5 minus 4, and it's 1, and we're going to keep the negative sign because the higher number here is 5, so it's negative 1. Here, 120, so 100, what's the difference between 120? Well, we know that it's 80 because it's 100 minus 20, that's 80. And we keep the sign of the higher number. The negative belongs to the 20 and the 100 is positive. 100 is the bigger number, so we know it's a positive 80. I hope this video was very helpful for you guys. I will come up with no videos dealing with integers because I know that integers are a little difficult when you're introducing the idea to someone, but once you get a grip on it, you'll be able to go ahead and do any problem in math going forward. Okay, guys? I hope that video was helpful to you guys. And as I said before, I have plenty of free videos on YouTube. Just go ahead and check me out, Eggy, the Math Egghead program. And also, I have a Patreon if you want more lengthy videos that dive into the topics of college algebra, calculus, pre-calculus, and chemistry. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye, guys.